Hi everyone, Ryan Adams with Microsoft, working with the Customer Success Engineering team. And today we're just going to take a look at how we can query data in our data lake from Synapse Serverless. And in a previous video, we showed how we could do it using an open row set, which is a great ad hoc way to be able to go and inspect things in your lake. But what if you want to persist this as a table? Now, when you persist this as a table, we're still only storing the metadata. The data itself still sits out inside the lake. This is just how we're going to be able to view the data out in the lake. So we're really only storing the metadata here. Let's take a look at how we're going to do this. We're going to start by going into the Develop Hub. We'll click this icon here. That's going to take us directly into the Develop Hub. And then we'll hover over SQL scripts right here. And then when we do that, we'll be able to create a new SQL script. I've already done that for our purposes here today, so we'll just take a look at the code. Before you do execute the code, remember that one of the things we're going to need to do is actually go in here and change this to make sure that we are connected to the serverless engine by selecting built-in in our connect to drop-down box. So let's take a look at the code here really quickly, because there's a couple of prerequisites that we're going to have as we walk through this code. The first one is we need to create an external data source, and this defines the location where we're going to have all of our data at. For me, this is where it's at. This is the name of my data lake. This is the container that I have it in. This is the folder underneath that container where all of my data happens to sit. So we're just defining a location. We'll use this external data source later when we create the table. We're also creating a file format. The file format says what type of data are we expecting. For us in our instance, we're actually going to be expecting and using Parquet. You could use CSV here as well if you happen to store your data in CSV format. Then we get down to creating the actual table. Pretty simple. We're going to create an external table. I'm just going to call it temperature here. I have data stored out here from two different temperature sensors. I only have 3 columns worth of data, so I'm just creating a table with 3 columns. Column 1's temp 1 and temp 2, respectively, will hold the temperature data coming from those temperature sensors. And then I also have an arrival time as well, which is when the time that the data was collected. And once we create the external table, we do have an additional with clause that we're going to need to use here, which is going to say when you create this external table, where's all this stuff located at? Well, I'm going to use location here. This location will use automatically, based on the data source, my location that I had previously put up here. So when I look at the temperature underscore raw folder I've defined here, that is inside of the bronze folder. And then what I'm telling it is, you'll see these 2 double asterisks. Grab every file from that folder down recursively. We're defining the data source, which tells the location inside of my data lake where it's at, and my format as well. Both of those 2 things we created above. We're defining those here inside the external table. Now I've already run this, so I don't need to run it again, but once you've run it, the table's there. We simply have to query it. It's very simple and easy to do. Once I do that, it's a simple select statement. I'm saying go grab those 3 columns from my temperature table that I just created and go ahead and order them by the arrival time descending so I can look at that temperature across time. When I do that, we'll look at the results set pane here. We'll see that yes, we did get our results back as expected. Here's all the temperatures from the first sensor, temperatures from the second sensor, and then the arrival time from each of those. So this is nice because I didn't have to do this ad hoc and write out the whole open row set statement. Once I've created this external table here, once new data comes into that folder, there's nothing I need to do. I just query it as if it was any other table using serverless. One last cool thing, I can click the chart button here if I wanted to look at this a little bit more visually. And this will actually allow me to kind of chart my data over time so I can visually inspect it right here inside Synapse. I can see here that the temperature has increased over this chunk of time just a little bit. I can even hover over this to figure out, hey, I was at 103 here. Up here, when I hover over this, now I'm at 106. So I can see that temperature over time. So hopefully you found this useful, a great way to be able to go in and inspect your data inside your data lake, but not have to rewrite the query and remember the path all the time. You only have to do this once. Once you've created that, you're in good shape from that point forward.